Let me say hello to you. I am Sarah from Mehr Demokratie, and I'm very happy to welcome you here. And I shall do so officially also, but let me start with some technical details upfront. This meeting will hopefully also count with some English-speaking participants, and that is why we've organized interpretation from
whoever is here speaking English is very welcome. We will speak in German. The panel will be in German, but there's a translation that you can access through the Dolmetschen button is the small word ball in the toolbox. You just click there and then you will hear everything in English. Genau, okay, also das war das eine. Übersetzung jederzeit.
So that was one thing that I wanted to alert you to, that the interpretation is available at any time. Those who are here from Europe calling are well aware that we will also be taking questions from the participants. And while the panelists are speaking to you, you can start putting up your questions via Slido, and it'll be posted in the chat how you access it, and then you can enter your question there. And there's a second feature. You can also up the questions of other people. So if you find a question of someone else very interesting, then you can push it up. It'll be voted upwards. And when we have the time to take questions after about 50 minutes that we spent with the panel, then Max and Moritz, who are my co-moderators, they will be putting those questions to the panelists. So do please put your questions in Slido, and we will be taking them as we go. Then one other piece of information, this event is being streamed on YouTube, and it is also recorded for future use. I would just want to inform you about that so that you know what is happening. And now we shall start with the recording, and we have more than 200 participants. A hearty welcome to you at 8 o'clock in the evening. This is a very late event. I am Sarah Hendel from the Mehr Democracy Association, More Democracy. We actually work to make democracy more open, more participatory, and we have realized over the past few years that virtual meetings have a very far reach, and for the third time in a row, we are holding an annual digital summit. We take 4 days in order to look at all the digital developments in our society and on the repercussions of the digitization on our society. We talk about artificial intelligence here today, like so many others in the general public. And we would like to take out those aspects that are of paramount importance for democracy. And let's take the view on Europe first, but then tomorrow we shall be looking at artificial intelligence and ask ourselves whether it opens a new perspective for democracy, for more integration, and we will carry on debating it, and we'll also have a final event in Berlin on Friday. So this is the program for the next few days, and I do look forward to the panel of today. It is very special, I have to say, because we've taken on board 2 partners, Europe Calling and MeetEU, 2 other NGOs that work for Europe and follow the debate in the European context very closely. and Max of Europe Calling and Moritz of MeetEU will support me as co-moderators tonight. And I would like to thank you, the two of you, for having boarded this ship with me. And Moritz indeed is on a boat right now. But I'm also very, very excited about the panelists for tonight. It wasn't that easy to put the group together, but we've had amazing pre-discussions, and I think that we'll have a great meeting here tonight. I shall be introducing you as we go along and give you the floor. The focus of tonight's meeting will be the AI Act that has been elaborated on the European level, the first attempt to regulate comprehensively artificial intelligence, but we will be looking at all the questions and challenges to our democracy that artificial intelligence offers. And I have picked out four essential questions which I would like to give you by ways of introduction, and then we shall start. I have formulated them as questions, and perhaps we can come back to those questions in our general debate. But let me tell you what they are. Will artificial intelligence create more humanity? Will 24 witness the last democratic elections? Third question, is artificial intelligence the antithesis to the private sphere? And will artificial intelligence bring along a business model of mass surveillance? And those are my questions to you. And I would like to call up the first input, and that'll be the input by Lajla Fetic. She is AI expert in the Bertelsmann Foundation and has been interviewed so many times. I was watching a broadcast of Cultural Times, and she was there being interviewed. Then she was interviewed on Arte, and I'm really delighted to welcome you here, and I would like to give you the first slot. Thank you very much, Sarah. I can only lose now, I'm afraid. Having received such a warm introduction, I would like to share some slides with you, and I hope that you can see my screen. Okay, can you see it well? In our preparatory discussion, we talked about the question, what could be the topic for this panel? And we do have excellent experts, and this input is not for those experts. The input is for everyone who's in the room and who wonders, why is artificial intelligence connected to democracy? And we cannot see any Markus Lanz broadcast any longer without mentioning ChatGPT. And we really wonder whether technological means can help us living together as human beings and in society. I have a very critical view of that, and that is what we'll be looking at today. And as in every good debate, we first have to define a common floor. And I would like to start with a very breaking up a myth. The so-called artificial intelligence is not magic. It is not a godlike instrument that is handed down to us and has a very far reach. It is something statistical. It is mathematic. It is something that was created by the human being, by the human mind and the human brain, and makes a data usable in a unique way. So we do have a possibility now to take to make predictions, machine-based, and recommendations and decisions that will affect the real or the virtual environment of human-defined goals. It is a socio-technical system, and it doesn't only consist of technical components, but also of social components, and is socially embedded. What do I mean by that? Well, the data that are being used for the purposes of AI are information points, historic information points. They draw a picture of what society was, what happened in the past, and what the set of values are and where. It is a value question very often connected with that. And it's not like a toaster or some technical device. AI is a process of many individual decisions. What do I want to use it for? How do I interpret all the data? That is very decisive for a society to find an answer to that. And I would like to use it in such a way that the human decision is supported. And this is what we use. What we can use AI for, analyzing data and moving within certain limits of regulation. But it is a technical tool. So that is why it has its advantage. Artificial intelligence didn't suddenly come up with ChatGPT. It was always present in the debate since the 50s, and we know that it is not neutral. It is not, it's neither good nor bad. Technology itself doesn't have a conscience. AI cannot decide to be bad or good. I can use it for good purposes or bad purposes, and I can conceive it in such a way that I can take human decisions, but it's never objective. It'll always be based on values or historic data. The pandemic, for example, gives us a host of data. We profited from disinfection in hospitals, but they don't recognize, they are automated and they don't recognize black hands. There is no recognition of certain hands. So certain groups in the society have simply not been considered when developing this gadget or this technological application. And we know that for automatic driving, for cars that drive, self-driving cars, we also know that certain groups in the society will not be recognized by the software on board of these cars. So despite our knowledge of this, knowing that there are systems that reproduce prejudices, it's apparently only limited to the experts who know this. We took a survey and asked, have you ever experienced any discrimination? And 63% said, no, I have not experienced any discrimination or any automatic discrimination. So if you look, for example, at robo recruiting, you will see a certain job profiling and CV profiling, and some people will always have an advantage due to that, and some others will have a disadvantage. That is something the experts know, but the general public does not know that. AI is very often portrayed as utopian or dystopian. tech utopias or tech dystopias are two sides of the same coin. Very often you hear that technology can solve the problems of humanity and even of democracy. It has a superhuman possibility to solve problems. Techno-solutionism is the term for that. And I also hear that AI will extinguish the humankind. So it is an existential threat. And both these stories, the question is, where's the responsibility? And there is something that is very pro-technology, and we have perhaps a case of discrimination through AI. And we look, for example, at the question of how the places in childcare are allocated, and AI could help us, but it really blinds us to the real responsibility. And this is something that we must understand in the society at large.
We must have a quite pragmatic side and opinion on AI. And reality can help us because these technologies, they came to stay. They are already shaping our daily lives. It's not about future technologies. It is about shaping the potential of our doing and how we deal with technologies. I would like to give you some examples. It's difficult to get some good examples, but Felix Sichter and Julia Sichler, they know very well that it is difficult to find examples in science. But today, I just brought along two examples for you. First of all, it is about Polis. First of all, it is an attempt to create a social platform, not only to not only to emphasize those platforms with contents that polarize, but it is about contents that are consensus based, solution oriented, and that promote the traditional attention economy. AI cannot generate democracy and cannot invent contents of relevant nature, but AI can do a data analysis and also push some positive contents and also lead to a value-based decision. So am I supposed to promote those radical contents, or am I supposed to promote those positive and value-oriented contents in favor of society? It's not about technology, it's about shaping things. Well, I occupy myself a lot about managing those technologies, but there are already algorithms and technologies being used in the public administration or in administration and management in general in order to better analyze data, to make more consistent or coherent decisions and to prepare those decisions. And for that, you can use algorithm systems. And it is about here the example chatbot Ina. It has been used since 2019 by the Integration Office in Schleswig-Holstein as an additional communication channel in official work. That means the chatbot is used as a contact point for example, severely disabled citizens and for companies. And this is used also to make administration more understandable to people. But does it solve all problems? No, it is about to evaluate all the requests submitted by citizens, and it is just taking over a part of the routine tasks. That means to answer citizens' requests. That means the officers in charge can really just concentrate on the more important cases, and also dedicate their time much more to people, to the citizens. And it is a kind of participatory development of tools, and also its utilization, but it is not replacing democracy, or also replacing our participatory systems we have in our democracy. Citizens' participation is often only accessible to some groups. If AI is used to give a voice to those who are marginalized, great. But AI cannot event contents that do not exist. If it is about supporting humanity through machine learning, it's good. But it's not about fighting against each other, but about coping and also dealing with things commonly, and also taking more responsibility for the design and use of technology. It is about data analysis. So if I have a citizen's participation and I want to just analyze the contributions in order to recognize patterns, great. But AI cannot be participatory and be a member of that dialogue. Well, and this requires more courage for promoting common good examples. And you also need, on the other hand, effective addressing of those risks to decide whether AI is supposed to be used, and whether all requirements can be met. And as it was already said, the AI Act is not the silver bullet for everything, but we need to define all the legal requirements in order to prevent discrimination from happening. That's my contribution. Thank you very much, Lajla. I thank you very much for this wonderful introduction and for showing us the bigger challenges to us. And it's nice to hear more about the positive sides and about the potentials. But now let's just take a step back. Of course, the risks cannot be underestimated. And of course, there are some risks, and the AI Act is supposed to tackle these risks. Daniel Leisegang is our next speaker. He is editor-in-chief of netzpolitik.org, and he works in the field of digital technologies. And I would like to recommend to you to visit their homepage to learn more about the present matters. And Daniel Leisegang will also talk about the major challenges when it comes to AI. Daniel, please take the floor. I hope you can hear me fine and that you can see my slides. Well, thank you very much for inviting me, first of all, and to take over this easy job. I mean, it's very easy to talk about things you hope for, but I think it is really worth just going too deep in this debate. And I would like just to show my presentation about the 6 major problems regarding the AI Act. Not only because I wish to criticize the work that is being elaborated by the EU Commission and the EU Council. I think the things that are are being decided there, I mean, also after a very fierce debate, is useful because it is about just identifying the risk categories. Also, ChatGPT was included, other things were excluded. I would like to talk briefly about the major problems, but they wish to include several risk categories, and some things have or are supposed to be excluded, like social scoring. This is something we know from China. That means to judge on certain behaviors that could lead to consequences. Retro will still be allowed, but basically several things are positive here. And maybe I could just show to you basically where I see some difficulties coming up. First of all, it is about the state biometrical mass surveillance. That means the negotiations will be carried out about the draft, and the EU Council is supposed to approve it. It is about surveillance. For example, I'm just crossing the street and I'm being observed, and also surveillance is made by the means of a camera. It means you need data, biometrical data, you need images. This is something that has been forbidden so far by the parliament, but the retro program will be allowed at a certain extent. The problem here is that the infrastructure, the databases, and also the surveillance systems need to exist for that, must be given for that. I would have wished from our federal government in Germany, in Berlin, that they would be against retro. Excuse me, could you explain what retro is about? It is about the retroactive surveillance. That means that I can just record images. For example, if there is an offense or a crime that took place, an offense that took place on a certain space, you can just retroactively check on that and just look at the images and data. So the infrastructure will remain, and this is something that I think it's problematic, and this is something that the so-called AI allows you to do. And then the second one is a favorable regulation for military AI equipment. That means that those data or AI is utilized for military purposes, and that there are no restrictions to that. And I think this is something that is difficult. That means because you are creating spaces or rooms that maybe has less regulations. France, but also the German military forces, they wish to build up AI strategies for that, also regarding autonomous weapons. And this is a scenario that needs to be tackled or discussed at an early stage. There is also a dual use system that can be also used for military purposes, and that is going to be strictly or more strictly regulated. But we need to know where the limitations are for that. And at the end of the day, also because we are talking here about autonomous weapons, and that would be an automation of warfare. And we are also talking of possible human fatalities. And maybe we are also talking of a possible war here that would start due to AI. Then thirdly, it is about the national security. That means that AI systems could be used in favor of national security. The EU presidency 2021-2022 also had foreseen that, and the EU Council confirmed it. And countries like Hungary and Poland, who are more open or who much more accept those systems, I think they would really use these gaps. And there has been a restriction for that, also a trilogue. And so that means the institutions have to decide on that. It is about always a gap or a possible option that still remains here to use AI for these military purposes. Then number 4, it is the utilization of AI systems at the EU borders. It is a kind of experimental field, political experimental field that in which AI can use for repression, for surveillance, also regarding immigration, because there you can expect less resistance. This also applies to the AI regulation. The AI Act really sees this application as a risk, but most players, they really assess that those systems could really be used for a pushback or for criminal offenses in order also to recognize profiles, accents, etc. So these technologies, they are biased. They always have some bugs and could also help to bypass human rights. The same also applies to when it comes to the rights of those impacted. So we wish that consumers or those impacted, that they are really enabled to defend themselves. This is something that has not been included. There is no kind of complaint option, so that you can just lodge a complaint to a national authority or a EU authority. Also regarding the the consumer protection associations, this is something that's should be looked at. Of course, there are some regulations, EU regulations and national regulations that protect the consumer protections, also data protection regulations and act. Number 6, and then I will conclude my speech. If there are soft definitions, this AI Act would be a kind of a teethless cat, or would be far too soft. It means these definitions, they are decisive here. They should give orientation. So when we talk about AI, it is a collective term to describe how data relate to each other and how they respond to each other. Maybe this would be a far too soft terminology here if I'm supposed to regulate things. But everybody is aware of that. We would need much more interpretation on this. That means whether a set of data is relevant and flawless. And this is the terminology used in the regulation text. So what are representative data here at the end of the day? What are flawless data? Well, they are not representative and nor flawless. They are always biased. And this is why I find things difficult here, because this room for interpretation really makes things difficult here. Thank you very much, Daniel, for that. I think was quite a ride through several aspects that you've mentioned. But after that, we will still have some time to discuss things in more detail. But I also think that Felix would also like to make some comments on that. Felix Karrte, he is the Europe Director of Research. It is a worldwide NGO who is very much dedicated
bisher erlebt haben. Und ich fand es voll toll, auf eurer Webseite steht,
to this technical area, and I saw your very relevant statements. I saw on your homepage algorithms can be changed, brands can be changed, but democracy can also be strengthened. And Felix, I think you are the right person also to make comments here when it comes to AI and democracy, and also about the impact on democracy when it comes to AI. Felix, I would like to pass you the floor. Thank you very much, Sarah, for inviting me. I must admit, if when you work primarily on the AI Act, I think, I mean, this is the buzzword. It's all over the place. And I think that neither AI or the technology is bad. And I think that democratic governments but all can really have this capacity to shape things. I think many things, communications, telecommunications, they might be affected.
And that it is explained with democracy. I would like to talk about other applications of AI, algorithm, rhythmic recommendations. We have a bit of an audio problem. That is why Felix has been asked to switch off his camera. That's a shame. Okay, just carry on. Try and carry on, Felix. And so I would like to talk about specific applications, algorithmic recommendation systems. These are algorithms. But unfortunately, we seem to have lost him altogether. That is such a shame. He is in a hotel and the internet connection doesn't seem to be very stable. Perhaps we should go on with Alexandra. I'll try to improve my connection. Perhaps you can try with your video data. I don't see you, I'm afraid, says Sarah, but you're still there. Okay. Okay, so he's quit us for a short while. Let's take Alexandra on right now. It is really great that you are here tonight. Alexandra Geese is a member of the European Parliament, and she's also the vice chair of the Greens and the EFA Group, and she has been dealing with digital topics for a very, very long time. She's also someone who worked intensively on the construction of the AI Act. How happy are you with the attempt to regulate artificial intelligence? And perhaps you can give us your take on how things will evolve and where we stand right now. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to see that so many people take the time to look into AI. I have to admit that you feel totally lost if you don't follow the development of AI on Twitter. And Felix is not the only one who seems to be missing out, and everyone is joking about that fact. So where are we on the legislation of AI? Well, let me tell you that the report was adopted last week. Around lunchtime, we adopted it, and the same night, the trilogue started. The first negotiations between the Council and the European Parliament, that is, in order to come to a compromise solution. However, this is a very complex and a very long piece of legislation, and at the same time, reality moves forward very quickly and changes very quickly. That's why we don't know when the trilogue will be over. Everybody's very ambitious, however, everyone who participates in the trilogue, because this is one of the flagship pieces of legislation of this commission, and that is why everybody has a keen interest on actually concluding the negotiations up until January in order to vote, take the final vote in the Parliament, and then adopt it in the Council. To finish this within 9 months is a rather challenging timeline. But I assess the situation as rather positive, that Europe really is the first continent to start offering such a thorough piece of legislation on AI. In the Western world, we are the first ones to table this. We know that most of it is generated, created, and crafted in the United States, but they don't have any legislation on it. Lajla showed us that the majority of the people have no idea that they've been discriminated against, and that is why they can't take their complaints to any court. Within the framework of the possible, I'm quite happy with the version that was adopted by the Parliament. A lot was changed in the past week. We didn't have a majority until very recently, but then ChatGPT came along, and quite a few members of Parliament, my colleagues, all of a sudden realized that this technology goes very deep into our everyday life, and that it will enter very deeply into our real life, on our everyday reality, really. And this allowed us to extend a few bans, like, for example, the emotion recognition, the sexual orientation, the ban on sexual orientation identification. The external borders of the EU were a very sensitive area, and that the foundation models, like, for example, ChatGPT, which really form the basis of the development of other AI applications, have been taken on board. They're not very serious or very limiting, those regulations that are offered for this, but the risks are spelled out, and they need to be limited. And they also need to explain those big companies where the data comes from, which trains those systems. And I was told that this would never be reported. In Silicon Valley, when I visited Microsoft last year, they told me that they would never actually report on that. But now they realize that they have to shoulder a certain responsibility for the origin of the data that they use to train those systems. I also share Daniel's assessment that it is not enough. Data needs to be representative. He picked that up, but how do you reply to that question? I raised it with the commissioner, but she wasn't in a position to give me a clear answer. So the criticism prevails, but still we have a piece of legislation that will will look into the risks of AI and offers a certain dynamic which can be further developed. And I think this should be understood as a major step forward in Europe, because it takes us from this very simple solution of either banning or prohibiting it altogether, or leaving it completely free and open to the big companies. The military applications have not been taken on board, but it was very difficult to integrate that into the legislative act because we wouldn't have gained the majority for the adoption. Many of our colleagues claim that this would have to be negotiated on a global level. I am very much in favor of limiting it very clearly, but I can also understand that my colleagues say that we need global agreements and global negotiations. So therefore, it is perhaps a major progress to regulate the rest and leave military applications out. Can I make my own contribution also, or was I only asked to reply? Okay, let me, in the 1 or 2 minutes that you give me, offer another thought. Artificial intelligence is a very powerful technology, but it is not new at all. It really is based on old ideas, but you now have can process huge data, big data, and only a handful of big companies can actually manage those big data and have the capacity, physical capacity, and the computer systems, and they are those typical companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and the others. And this leads to a huge concentration of power, of data, of market share. You asked the question, Sarah, whether we will get away from mass surveillance. Well, let me tell you that all the data that we generate and use in the computer will, of course, be collected. Mostly these are men and white and rich, and they control the life of so many applications like ChatGPT and all the follow-on developments. These are huge models, foundation models, which will also be the basis for smaller applications to be developed in the future. And then AI does not only reproduce stereotypes and prejudices, but it also intensifies them. Let me give you an example. Apple Pay is something that's been rolled out very broadly. And in the US, last year, there was a case of a couple. They own the same house, they own the same company, they live in the same house, they have children. There are no differences between them, but the credit frame that was allotted to the male partner was 20 times higher than that allotted to his wife. And that is a typical example of basing the decision on old data, on historic data. You're not being regarded as an individual, but it is the bias that applies. And what does that mean on a global scale? Women will be getting less as in the past, and they will be able to invest less. And it means that men will grow much richer and women much poorer. And you can transpose that to all the other sectors. And there are some feedback loops active here. So it aggravates the present day situation. If you want to break out of those loops, you have to have the political will, or you have to approach the management boards and the directors of these companies, and look at those companies. Who will approach them? Well, I have my doubts, and I think all we can do is simply set some guardrails, but we will not muster the political will to change this very profoundly. I had another point that I wanted to mention, but I think Felix was trying to make the same point. Thank you very much, Alexandra, and I'm sure that Felix will be raising that point. It looks quite good, Felix. Yes, I hope that you can hear me. Okay, do start. I don't want to add that much because I'm sure that there are quite a lot of questions, and Alexandra has taken up so many points in her contribution. She said, for example, that data capital is concentrated in the hands of just a few companies, and that it will be really difficult to participate on an equal footing in that kind of economy. And it will have huge repercussions on the political participation also. Look at Elon Musk, for example. He single-handedly, without without giving account for it, he and single-handedly uh, did away with the discrimination of war victims and also of sexual minorities. And that is something which shows the power that comes with the concentration of the access to AI. 70% of all the cases, all the things that we see on the internet are generated by algorithmic recommendations. In 2004, we already talked about it, but in 24, we will have European Parliament elections, and we will also have elections in the United States. And if you are a pessimist, then you could really begin to worry about the future of our planet, because some of the climate agreements and conventions will probably be cancelled and repelled altogether, because some of those who will be voted into power will be voted into power due to AI. Technology in itself is never good or bad, but look at deep fake pornography, for example, which you can down which you can create through a download of a photograph of a person who you thoroughly dislike, and then fake pornography can be created with the new technology, and this person would become completely discredited. And I really wonder how we can stop that sort of thing being allowed in the social media. I hope that we can take that up in the discussion. Yes, that's certainly one of the central issues of a democracy, elections. And will we be able to organize a fair and democratic election campaign? If you would like to come in on that one again, then you may as a panelist. Otherwise, I think I would open up to the floor right now. Is there anyone who would like to take the floor again? Alexandra? And then perhaps Lajla? Yes, exactly. I would also like to come back to this point of election. AI, ChatGPT, and those generators really offer the opportunity to post deep fake news. text, photos that discredit other people, statistics that don't really exist. And you can upload them, you can create deep fakes of politicians and put quotes in their mouths that of things that they never said. Share pics, for example, works like that. And that is the kind of content which can be produced very rapidly, but it will also be reproduced by the algorithmic recommendations again, because they decide on the so-called factual information that we see. They create more interaction. They are optimized under the criteria of interaction. And the more comments, the more likes you get for that sort of information or fake information, you will be completely creating a misleading information. And in the end, we might simply have a situation where only 5% of the information is truthful and the rest is just pure fiction, because algorithms will privilege the information which shakes people up, which creates emotions and reactions. And that is a real problem, because people will be losing the knowledge and the possibility to decide on what is truthful and what is a lie. And it may not have been any different in the Middle Ages, but now we are so closely connected with high developed democracies, and our citizens are supposed to take sensible decisions. But it's the emotions that are being triggered and pushed. So somebody who spreads lies doesn't really have to provide the proof that this is truthful information. People will react to it and they will say, well, I'm not sure whether this is true or not. But it simply will play into the hands of the right extremist. And that is why we also have such a polarization in the political debate in certain countries, and the uprising of so many autocracies. Perhaps I should also like to offer you a possibility to share your ideas of what needs to be done in order not to be completely submerged by such a development, Lajla. And Daniel, perhaps you would also like to come in again. Well, my wish for the debate would really be that we take a rest and that we take a deep breath, and that we look at those systems that have been created way back in the 50s. I think we are in a position as a society to really co-create the way forward. But the main question is, what will be the underlying intention? What I said when I said technology is neither good nor bad, needs to be qualified. Definitely, the use of technology can be very harmful. But technology doesn't have its own intention. The technology simply follows the intentions and the value decisions of those who develop it and who interpret it and who interpret the technological output. So therefore, we can only say it's totally on us. We as human beings will have to put the technology to the right use. ChatGPT, to take that example, it's a very cool example for offering an access to such a technology for people with such little knowledge, technological knowledge. It really offers a breadth of wisdom to the general public. It is not the fault of the technology, but it is our job to interpret the technology. And this is a transferal, really, of the responsibility. We need to classify this. We need to interpret this. That's something that normally we should be learning in school, but this is a huge challenge to the society at large. And we need media competencies in order to take better decisions faced with the media possibilities. And AI is certainly always misleading and can definitely show us reality through a misleading perspective. Definitely. And we can use AI for routine jobs, but we also need the human mind and conscience in order to understand what's going on and to interpret it. Daniel, yes, very quickly. I have 3 points. I really have to say it's difficult for me to remain optimistic looking at the developments. I'll connect the points. One point is the virtualization. The system is so powerful. It's much more powerful than any other system that we had before. I can individually tailor make those news. Cambridge Analytica, for example, made that or generated that on the basis of big data with much weaker tools. And now we have a much stronger possibilities, and it's the scalability. You can create stories, you can generate so much content, you have 100,000 of followers, and there are so many fake stories out there, and so much nuisance being told to the people. But I think that we really need to be aware of the fact that we'll all be able to use AI for the purposes that we choose. And the Russian trolls will have access to it, and also the military. I know that we've always been in dialogue, that we've tried to discuss things amongst each other, find the right arguments, and take a democratic decision. That is a democratic process. But even the scientific knowledge is being questioned nowadays. Just look at Trump, at the position that he defends. The boss of CNN had to leave his post, and Trump could just carry on telling the same lies even after the corona years. And much of it doesn't have to be plausible. It just has to raise the interest of the people. People believe something different from everybody else, and that is attractive to them. And then we will not only be overwhelmed by the lies, but there will be other people like Trump's people, Trumpists, and they will simply claim something else is fake. We will notice that a lot of fake is going around and coming around, but they will also confront us with observations that what we say is fake. And it'll get more and more difficult. And I think the only thing we can do is place firewalls. We must unmask AI. AI-generated content must be declared, and we need a very strict regulation.
Daniel, hast du jetzt nochmal die dystopische Stimmung
Well,
gelegt?
Daniel, thank you very much. You also gave us some dystopian opinion to that. So what about Felix? Would you like to jump in now, or would you like to comment on that when you answer questions? Yeah, later on. Oh. Thank you, because I would like just to hand over to Max for the questions from the audience. Thank you very much. The public is already talking a lot in the background, and there are some questions that were asked here through Slido. But the top question is from Ute, for example, from Germany. How can we implement investments in based on values and not leaving them completely to the big corporations and tech companies? How can we include the citizens into AI?
Max, wie wollen wir das machen? Das haben wir jetzt nicht vorher besprochen. Wollen wir nicht
Well, would you like maybe to read out 2 to 3 questions, and so that our panelists could just answer some of them? Yeah. Okay, then here's a question by Claudia regarding intellectual property. Are these aspects going to be evaluated as well? How and when can these contents be used by AI? And are the authors going to be remunerated for that? And then a third question, and then we move on to English. Moritz asked someone who calls himself as a tech freak, how can this person be controlled? This is a question that's always been asked. It is about regulation and about the control that the rules are going to be followed. These are the 3 questions. Felix, if you wish, you could just start answering the questions. Well, I will start directly with the last question. First, I would like to agree with Daniel. Yeah, I am so a little bit pessimistic right now if it when it comes to these AI generated contents that are used against democracy. I think this will even be expanded in future. If we have a look at these own references, because I know, for example, 2017, only 70 to 20% of the citizens in Germany said that AfD is a right-wing party, but 10 to 15% less say that today. They think today that they are a moderate party, although this party has become even more radical now. And that means the AI is really creating disinformation, not only by the means of chat GPT. This is something that has been also mentioned by Daniel and Alexandra. It means this has given some more momentum to this phenomenon. Also regarding the Kremlin and they are trying to spread fake news, just fake Spiegel and other magazines' homepages with fake contents. And I think we don't have enough time to spend with media education, because it's a quite, long-term process that you need to carry out here. We really need to impose these legal tools that we have. We don't have a supervisory authority that is capable to impose these rules yet, but it is about also the risk of gaps that could be used. So we need to really empower authorities and make them more capable to deal with those aspects. Also give them tools to audit things, and also to define rules for the corporations when it comes to programming AI, and to have more law enforcement in that. Yes, thank you very much. We are also talking about value orientation, and you also talked about investments, about federal funds, and so on. Yeah, of course. We are also opposing to that in the coalition treaty. We also um, required a fund to dedicated to digital technologies. It's not about AI only, but I don't remember how much the fund was about. It was about millions, and I don't know more about the implementation. I shall ask my colleagues for that. But uh, okay, so maybe Lajla knows more about that. So we have negotiated this item in the treaty, in the coalition treaty. But you should also consider that in the US, it is about $40 billion in investments from the private industry, from the industries, apart from the military. And companies like Meta, they just generate billions and billions in profits. And it is, you can't top that with the public funds. We don't have that volume in capital in Europe. And this capital is split into online publicity. And in the past, part of this money was dedicated also to the media, like magazines and newspapers. But today, part of this money is dedicated to publicity, but also to fake news or disinformation. So it is a vicious circle, what we see here. And when we it's not that these networks, they are promoting hatred in the net only, but it is about a commercial incentive that people have here when it comes to publicity. And in this Digital Services Act, they have embedded some rules regarding that, but we still have to talk about investments and funding of the system. Regarding intellectual property, in this AI Act, we wrote down in the draft that regarding the regenerative systems, we need more regulations for that. And I also did an interview with Forbes, and in the US, people are also questioning that if ChatGPT should be retrained with data. These are some challenges, but these are some ambitions that are things that are seen or considered in the US as quite ambitious. But you really have to consider the concerns of journalists and of the media, because if you take away the entire funding from them, we will get less reliable information. And in the AI Act, it is supposed to have an implementation by the national authorities, but that's not completely defined. But in case of the digital services, it is about the EU Commission. They will just create 120 new jobs for that. And there is also this new European Center for Algorithms, this ACAT in Sevilla, in Spain, that is supposed to give concentration to national authorities and also to the EU Commission. But of course, you need to build up huge amounts of knowledge here, or huge volumes of knowledge. Thank you very much, Lajla. Maybe you would like to comment on that. Well, I think the dynamism is very interesting. Normally, I am the bad cop. That's my role. But in this case, it is about encouraging this round of speakers here, because we can make our contribution with several levers that we can use. As a citizen, I can still take a decision whether I want to use a platform, an app or not. It's not only always possible, especially if the state is using AI, you can only emigrate, but there are still active consumers who take active decisions. We need regulation, we need a good implementation of the AI regulation that is coming up, and we also need innovation and also promotion of innovations. We could really have a set of tools that to use here. And this is the message I would like to convey. Which are the tools that we need to resolve which problems? Well, just to answer the question, who is going to control all of that? Well, the corporations, they need a conformity assessment in the first place, and they need to test themselves. If I'm testing myself, if I am monitoring myself, I mean, you can ask yourselves here in the digital space, how trustful this assessment is at the end of the day. And it is about also not only norms for society, but it is about definition of rules and for having a scope. And it is about having a trustworthy AI. But who is entitled, who takes the lead in such normative bodies? As a young woman at the age of 30, as a civil society member, I also participated in discussions with the normative authorities. If we wish the norms to be implemented properly, we need a democratic approach to that. We have different approaches that we need to test here. It's not only, about saying that we are completely in the hands of corporations, but we are also pioneers here in Europe when it comes to defining rules for that. Thank you very much, Lajla, for that, for giving me hope. Maybe Felix would like to criticize that? No, I don't want to criticize anything. Of course, we are in the hands of the tech because they are monopoles, and we need controls from the trust authorities. Well, it is the biggest manipulation industry of humanity, of humankind. And they have departments who, are occupying themselves with generating addictive gadgets. And it's only, only regulation can help us to stop that. Then next questions, Max, should we just move on to the next round? Yes, and we will also have shortly the English questions as well. Oh, Daniel, would you like to take the floor shortly? Well, I just wanted to ask you, well, Alexandra also talked about this vicious circle that we need to further invest into positive or to trustful journalism. When we talk about Switzerland and about referendums and decision taking, the media are very active as well. That means you, journalists, you still have a say there, but also this collective participation, friends and families. So how are people, informing themselves? I would just like to ask you, do you think it is hopeless? So are we losing the democratic discourse here? Well, no, I don't fear that. If you just look at the studies, young people, if you ask young people, the traditional media, they are not completely at the end. Of course, they are not the gatekeepers as they used to be. There is a qualitative transition here, but people are still watching the news, but also questioning them. The spectrum has become very broad, and the media, or the donations of funded media, they just act differently, and they are not only about business. The problem here is that, it will become more difficult to differentiate. And I would like to conclude by saying well, there is polarization. There is a study that was published and saying that 43% of people, they mistrust the traditional media, and that's a lot. I mean, it is about polarization, and maybe you don't only have one relative who would vote for AfD, for the right-wing parties. There are many more people here there. So, I mean, this portion of people who are willing to question it, they are becoming less. Now we would like just to switch to English.
Fabio from Italy, and he would like to ask his question by himself. So, Fabio, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Moritz, and thank you everyone for this very interesting presentation. So I'm going to ask my question, which I posted anonymously just because I'm not registered to Slido, but I'm happy to ask it non-anonymously. So my question is, the EU seems to be putting effort in regulating the ethical aspect of AI, but there doesn't seem to be a plan for the, I'm going to add, in my opinion, inevitable loss of jobs that mass adoption of AI will bring. In your opinion, what will be the trigger to make politicians worry about it, if any? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Fabio. And there are two questions, but they're very short, so I will just read them for you. The first one is, how do people will control the people who wants to use AI for bad intentions? So how to prevent that AI is being used for bad intentions. And another question posed by Elman is, how can these firewalls that Daniel Leisegang talked about will be implemented? Especially, how can an AI label be crafted that all people trust? How can it be embedded into metadata and not be altered? So those are the three English questions for the panel.
Super, Freiwillige vor. Hat jemand
So,
einen Impuls?
who would like to first?
Felix, gerne.
Felix?
Ich hatte jetzt tatsächlich gar keinen Impuls.
Well,
eine Frage aufgreifen, aber vielleicht gibt es jemand
I would like just to take up a question, but I didn't hold a presentation. Maybe Lajla? Yes, Lajla. Yeah, so we'll start, and maybe Felix, you can just comment on that. Well, if AI will get rid of jobs, this is something that is being discussed a lot. Well, AI will get rid or transform parts of those jobs. I mean, it's not about getting rid of entire job profiles, but some jobs or functions will be taken over by AI. And it is about really defining those jobs or identifying those jobs that are in danger and to protect people. So if low skilled work is still cheap, so that you don't need AI. But when you talk about middle income, you will need to support people here. We don't have a big focus here in Germany. If you talk about academics, academically trained people, we will need to get prepared to support people. So our education platform is not enough. We still need more funding here.
Ja, gerne, Alexandra. Und dann
Alexandra. Well, I think one of the difficulties of us in politics is that there are a number of very respectable studies on the job losses. And they look at different dimensions. So we know that something will happen, but what exactly will happen, nobody can tell. For a long time, it was said that everybody must learn to write programs, and it's probably the job of the AI itself now. So you don't need to learn that really to code that. But the creative artists, like graphic artists, they are worried much more now that they might be losing their jobs. So it's a different group altogether. In order to develop a strategy now to buffer this, the job losses, we would need more reliable data, really. I think that what we're faced with is a system that comes onto the market, as it were, and it will be further developed. And those people who understand that something will move in their jobs will seek retraining, further training, and requalification. But I think we do need a more general approach. It will be integrated into the normal daily life of people. I don't think that it is easy to plan all this for particular professions. Because the studies are all very dystopic in their conclusions, but you don't know which way it'll really pan out. And one of the best examples, I think, is YouTube. Who would have thought that our children would become YouTubers? I think we also need to redefine work as a society. The work in the middle segment of the working or the employment market today that we will no longer have in the future is somehow to be replaced, because there are people who try to make ends meet, to meet the responsibilities that they have at home, and to take on a job in the middle segment of the labor market. And there's a lot of manual work that will probably prevail. Cleaning an apartment will probably still be easier for a human being for a long time. Although we might wish that a robot could do that sort of job, but that's a sort of job that will probably exist for quite some time. The same goes for caring professions. And we will probably find a huge, a growing disparity and polarity between jobs for women and jobs for men. And the lower income brackets will most probably be paid even more poorly in the future. And these people will hardly move beyond the minimum income threshold, because so many people already perform those tasks free of charge. And the highly qualified employees are mostly men in the area of energy transformation, for example, technical jobs, and very little is being done to diversify the employment population in this area. It must be made more attractive. It must be more open in future, because technology will change the labor market, and we do have a message shortage of qualified labor. Yes, that of course is true, and that sends us back to the tendency that we felt all along, that AI destabilize the society in a certain way. Felix, perhaps you would like to come in, and then Daniel. Daniel can take the floor right away, no problem. Do you remember the question about the firewalls, how they can be implemented, and how an AI label could be created that would be trusted? I would like to come back to the job question. I think that Alexandra is totally right. We don't know how far-reaching the changes will be. An important German daily said a few days ago that AI will be taking over a lot of jobs. And I think a second development will be, it is already being witnessed, that certainly in the medium and upper academic jobs, project requests will have to be written in order to use AI. But I don't think we are heading into much progress and a more profitable future. The firewalls that I mentioned, well, I think there's always a principle that you can use to defend yourself against spam, for example. There's some technology available that will protect you from spam. And I think that's the kind of technology which will save us from AI. Technology which will be able to prove that a text is generated by AI or is properly crafted. But this will only be true for the medium term. That'll change in time. There's something which is regarded as very positive in the technical world, an open source technology. Facebook has published it with an open source, and it is AI that I can use myself for my private purposes, but I can also use it as a Russian troll. So I can use my private AI, and that is something that the big companies, tech companies, are really afraid of. But the firewall, that's quite difficult. There is hope, however. The federal president Steinmeier said that perhaps there should be a watermark placed on AI products. How that should work technically, I don't know. Who will be placing a watermark on a translation, for example? That's the same thing for pictures. I don't think that the watermark will be put on it and remain put and not and cannot be deleted. That I simply don't believe. Technically, that's not possible. We've reached the end of the time of our webinar. I would like to close on a positive note. And Lajla mentioned something which was a bit more positive. How can we engage the civil society in a regulation? Would, for example, platform councils be a workable solution? Well, this is a moment where I should pretend that I know what a platform council would be. Felix just moved. Perhaps Felix can offer us a positive side of the whole development. I can quickly tell you what platform councils are, and then I would like to give the floor back to you for the rest of the answer. The platform councils arose from a very good idea. And that is that there is no external control, Facebook, YouTube, and all the rest of it, whether or not they actually implement their terms of business and usage and so on and so forth. And these terms should be binding, and they could be civil councils. There's a Facebook oversight board that was established by a number of experts, and they have been established to control Facebook, but it doesn't really work because they don't have any access to the truly relevant business decisions. They don't know what the source code looks like and what the criteria for Zuckerberg's decisions are for 3 billion. So I don't think that that really leads us anywhere. I think I would like to add a positive aspect, but thank you very much for the explanation, Felix. How can we engage with the civil society more in this? It is not their responsibility to take on the responsibility for developing and for using AI. It's those companies and also the states or the governments. They can, if they want to regulate it, engage with the civil society. A chatbot, for example, offering language solutions, for example, they can consult with the general public how they can improve such applications, for example. And of course, we can also point our fingers to things not working really well, and we can improve the requirements. When implementing AI requirements, we will also need an agency for oversight. And of course, the civil society can then raise its voice, and in the best of all cases, it will be heard if the implementation is somewhat weak. But the responsibility lies with those who develop AI, and everybody else can decide on using it or not. And politicians can fight for digital rights. And in that case, everybody can participate and share in the new technology, but it is the companies and their owners who are responsible. Okay, very well then. Superb. I will unfortunately have to close the debate. I would like to excuse myself for having run over time. We started a little late. I would like to thank you all. This was only a beginning. As a society, I think we've only just started discussing this topic. And this was the very first event of our digital summit. And perhaps you would like to return tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and continue the debate with us. I think it became very clear that very deep changes will become apparent in future in our society and in our everyday life. And I think we wanted to contribute to that debate. Thank you to all of those who joined us with their questions and with their concerns. And thank you also to the panelists. And I wish you a very nice evening. And thank you very much to the interpreters.